Welcome to the Replenishing Life Project. 30 days to recover from burnout and reclaim your vitality. With your hosts, Morgan B. and Lucy Ann Chard.
Hey everybody, and welcome to the Replenishing Life Project. I'm Lucy Ann Chard and I'm here with my co-host Morgan B. Hey Morgan.
Hi.
And today we are thrilled to introduce you to our guest, Danielle Gardner. Dani is a business mentor who specialises in helping highly sensitive people to market themselves with quiet confidence. Dani started her entrepreneurial journey as an energy worker using the modalities of kinesiology, Reconnective Healing, and akashic records readings. The evolution from energy work to business mentoring came about organically when Dani found herself giving messaging and marketing guidance to clients who wanted to reinvent their careers and start a holistic business like she has done. Today, Dani is known for offering an alternative approach to business building, one that does not include free webinars, 5-day challenges, Facebook group marketing, lead magnets, or having to be online all the time. Sounds like bliss. Dani, welcome. It's so lovely to have you here. Welcome to the show.
Thank you so much, Lucy. It's really nice to be here. And I was just listening to that introduction going, yeah, that sounds really good. I know I wrote that so long ago, but I'm like, that was good.
It is. It's awesome. It's so it's just gives it a real kind of like a wholesome feeling. It's fabulous.
Yeah.
So, Dani, we were wondering, we'd like to start by asking you to share with us your experience of your journey through burnout and perhaps people you've worked with who have also experienced burnout and how they've come through that.
Yeah. So I think I have worked, I don't have any sort of really memorable stories about clients, although I know that a lot of the people I work with, they know they need to slow down. They've sort of done all the pushing and the striving and all of that. And that's very much what had happened to me. So when I think about my journey with burnout, the most recent is like being in my own business, but it really goes further back because when I was in my corporate job, I was just always a high achiever and you know, working back late and all of that sort of thing. So it's been a real journey to unlearn a lot of that. But I thought I would share just in terms of the most recent sort of experience of burnout. So it's interesting when we start our own business, you know, we often think, oh, we'll have all this freedom and all this time, and you know, and of course, in the beginning, you might have that because you don't have any clients, you know. But I know for me, what ended up happening, especially as I got introduced to Facebook groups, is really my whole world changed. And the Facebook groups that were ultimately very good for my business. They actually helped me get clients and things like that. But really what happened after a few years is I was just like, I can't keep doing this because, you know, I was waking up each day with like a low level anxiety, like just sort of waking up and then feeling good. And then it was like anxiety would come in and I'm like, what is that about? And it would always be traced back to like the Facebook group or the groups I was in, you know, something I'd posted or how's that going? And it was like a big, to me, schoolyard as well. Like, you know, it was like I didn't want my sharing to go unnoticed because that would somehow feel a bit humiliating, or you know, there was so many things going on with that. And eventually I actually had to have a mentoring session about this. So I have a personal mentor that I meet with like every 1 or 2 months, and I said to her, all right, I need to get out of Facebook groups, but I was so scared because I thought my business would shrivel up and die, you know, so that was the main thing. I thought that I couldn't have a business. I got that tunnel visioned about it that I forgot that there were businesses before Facebook groups, if you know what I mean.
Yes.
So I said to her, all right, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to do 30 days without sharing anything, without posting in these groups, and we'll just see how it goes. But I want to be accountable to not do that for 30 days. And it was really interesting because I know, you know, around about day 3, like I was just like, wow, you know, I'm like, this is great. You know? Like I was just not waking up with an anxiety. Like it was just, I could already feel how different it was. And I was just like, oh, that's it. Like I just knew it was going to go beyond the 30 days. I'm like, I'm just going to have to not have that as part of my business, you know. And so I'm actually still part of Facebook groups, but I don't really go in there, and I just maybe support some of my clients and their posts occasionally. But that alone was like the most significant part of my sort of burnout. And I had made steps prior to that so that the transition was a little bit smoother. But yeah, my business didn't shrivel up and die, and in fact, it's been way better. And it's really it's because it's been part of my experience. It's come into my messaging, which is why there's this, you know, the short version of what I'm doing is you know, helping people articulate their message, market with quiet confidence, and grow their business without being online all the time. So it's that bit that people go, really? You know, so yeah, I love, that's why I love messaging, because messaging is often, in my view, really needs to be a reflection of our own journey as well, the embodiment of what we've gone through that we can help others with. So yeah, that's sort of nutshell about my little journey with burnout.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you for sharing that. It's social media and being online is such a blessing in so many ways, and how we are able to connect with others. And then on the other side, there's so much to draw us in and to try to always capture our attention that it can be quite exhausting. And so how do you navigate that in business when you're, because I've been taught to, you know, post consistently, and you got to be consistent, and you got to be out there, and you were touching a bit on this, but what do you do if you are not feeling it? So if you're burnt out and you're just completely exhausted, and yet, you know, you do have to reach out and connect with others at some point, and how do you navigate that?
Yeah, it's a really good question. So first of all, I was doing all the things that, you know, I was told to do, be on all the platforms, be visible all the time, all that kind of thing. And I think some of the things that have really helped me see that and do things differently are human design. And I think, you know, I saw something about that, Morgan, on your profile. Yes. So that has definitely helped. So one of the things that I started to understand is that it was important for me to actually lean back. So, you know, I had been like really all my life leaning forward, being the initiator of everything. And it was sort of an experiment to go, well, what happens when I lean back? And really overall, I know through various experiences is that when I'm not pushing and striving, things actually happen. You know, they kind of, well, actually it's like the tide changes, you know, especially as a generator. If you're pushing out all the time, the energy is meant to be coming in. So you're kind of like pushing against what's meant to be really happening. So I had some, you know, good successes with that made me realize that I didn't have to do it like, you know, I'd been told. And, you know, even in terms of posting, so my current goal at the moment is to post less. So, whereas, you know, like normally business coaches say post multiple times a day on multiple platforms. I ain't doing that.
Same.
And yeah, so my current goal is around 3 times a week. But even like at the moment, there's the creative urge is not there at the moment. Normally it's actually always there, really. It's almost, sometimes I need to sort of go, no, I'm not going to post that, because what happens if I share something, then I'm in that vortex again of social media, so it's like if I share less, I'm not in that vortex, So I think one of the things is, by the act of sharing less, it automatically made what I did share more potent. So that's what I focus on now. Like, I don't consciously go, I'm going to make this potent, but it's just a choice to share less, but to really share when I have that urge. So yeah, coming back to right at the moment, I'm noticing that I don't have a really strong creative urge. And I'm also noticing that in my mind, I'm going, yeah, but you haven't shared like in a couple of days now, Dani. And then Facebook's going, oh, you haven't shared on your page for freaking 2 days,
Yeah.
The world's going to end. And so I'm like, yeah, no, I'm not. So like, I still get those sort of, yeah, you probably should, and, maybe there's that fear of like, people will forget about you, but I'm just not going to do it, and I don't know if this is the best advice for everyone. Do you know what I mean? Because I don't know, but if you have a pretty good message, and this is the thing. I mean, this conversation is not really about business as such, but if you have a strong message, then you are able to share less, because when you share, it is more potent. It's more, people are like, wow, and a message to me is something that goes beyond like your products and services, so yeah,
That's beautiful.
I hope I've answered that.
Yeah, it's beautiful. I'd like to kind of continue going with the flow with that, excuse the pun, because one of the things that I love that you speak about on your blog, Dani, is about replacing structure with ritual. I feel like that's really powerful, and certainly for me, that approach has been very healing. For I experienced a burnout by being incredibly rigid with what I felt that I had to do, and there was a lot of obligation energy there, and that really didn't work for me, and that kind of just depleted my life force energy. So yeah, if you feel called to, let's speak a little bit about replacing structure with ritual and how that can help to replenish your energy.
Yeah, that's an interesting question too. I always remember with that blog, I think I originally called it, it had something about flow in there. It'll come to me in a minute. But what had happened is I was in some environment, maybe it was a Facebook group or something, where people were talking about being in the flow, and and I was like, yeah, I want some of that, So I went, all right. So I stopped all of my regular things. Like, I didn't do my morning kind of ritual. I just like, no, I'm just going to go with the flow. Yeah, that's the answer. So what that resulted in is me spending a lot of time on the couch scrolling Facebook, and it was a disaster. I was like, it was not flow at all. But I kind of, went with the so-called flow for a few days, and I just thought, this is terrible. Like, and it really made me realize that the way I find flow is through some structure, or, another way to put it is ritual.
Yeah.
So it's interesting when I look at my own, the way I do things, like, yeah, I do try and make things more of a ritual, and I do like structure, and yet at the same time I have very loose kind of structures as well. Like one of my mentors is very, we talk about very similar things, and I can see that he's very structured and like very consistent, and I'm sort of, in a way, consistently not consistent in a good way kind of thing. It's like I can't necessarily, I used to like get into this idea of batching content and all this sort of stuff, and now I'm just like, no, it doesn't feel authentic to me. I want to be able to share in the moment. or, you know, something that's relevant or whatever. So, yeah, I find I have been very, very like too structured in my life, and now, and with maybe with other people as well, that comes to mind. But now I kind of I know I need something like a container or something to work within, and then, you know, I get to experience this flow, you know, that way.
Yeah, that makes good sense.
Yeah, Lucy and I were actually just talking about this morning.
Yeah,
because there's that that feeling of wanting to be consistent, but then how to I like how you said it, being, you know, inconsistent within the consistency, or being consistent with inconsistency.
consistently consistent.
Exactly. Yeah, I'm still and so yes, that's beautiful. I like that.
And I think just to go back to an example, I've kind of already said this, but like, it's like I'm going to post about 3 times a week, you know, but I'm not going to go, right, I'm posting Monday, Wednesday, Friday, you know, and, you know, have this kind of rigidity about it.
And so, yes, what I'd like to ask you about next is sort of coming from that, I can definitely relate with the high achiever. You know, I kind of went into a bit of a workaholic situation for a long time, for many years. And coming to this point of, you know, slowing down and allowing for more time to do things that we enjoy. I think you mentioned it as the word avocation. And could you talk more about that? And, you know, versus for everything having to have like a purpose, and, you know, everything we do having to, have a result or.
You girls have been mining my blogs there. Like, I do remember writing that one about a vacation some time ago. But yeah, like, we tend to think that everything needs to have a particular goal or outcome or be monetized if it's in business, you know. And, you know, there are things that just don't necessarily, you know, need to be monetized. Like, I think of one of my real joys and is photography, and you know, I haven't gone down the path of like, how can I monetize that, because you know, maybe I actually wouldn't enjoy it. I just want to do my stuff. I don't want to do other people's stuff, you know.
So like doing things for our own personal enjoyment. And taking ourselves out on a date for, you know, with ourselves. And
and actually the other thing that came to mind along these lines is, I think we've really got to work out, what does our non-digital life or non-business life look like? Be really clear about that before we start creating space. Because what I noticed I was doing is I was creating space, right? And I was filling it back up with computer stuff, because it was like, I didn't really have a plan, you know. So when I was back in England a few months back, I was like, well, what is my non-digital life plan? Oh yeah, permaculture. And, you know, so I ended up a bunch of things. Like, I went out and learned how to make a stool, and I did a gardening workshop, and I did a bushcraft workshop. But these were all things to sort of add to my skill set, so that I can have, these pursuits to look forward to. I think that's the other thing, is if there's nothing to look forward to, then there's always another thing that we can look up on our phone or our computer, or, you know, endless research and all of that kind of stuff.
That makes so much sense. There's so much clarity there, just, you know, with that statement, is to, I love that, to be clear about what your non-digital life looks like and feels like. I think that's something I'm going to be pondering. So thank you for that. That's really helpful. So from your perspective and in your experience, what would you say to, let's say, you know, we've got some business owners in our group, in our community, who perhaps are experiencing feeling burned out. They're in a process of burnout at the moment. What would you say would be the first step that they could take towards healing that feeling?
Well, I think often people are in this state of just doing and striving and, you know, trying to make things work, because really they're trying to make ends meet. Their livelihood is potentially at risk, you know.
Yeah.
So you know, I don't know how you can create anything sustainable from that place of fear. You know, like, I've got to create this because otherwise I can't pay the bills. So, you know, for me, it's like my suggestion is you might need to find some sort of other source of income, even if that takes you away from, you know, what you really want to do, because you got to have that release valve or something, you know. And then there's other times where it's a perceived threat. It's not an actual threat, you know. So I know that was the case for me initially. I was not accustomed to being looked after, you know, or provided for, should I say. You know, I've always been a very independent woman, and the thought of my husband, I don't know, like just providing, you know, paying for my hair to be coloured, or, you know, just these kind of things that I needed for myself. I just couldn't, you know, couldn't make that happen, or didn't want that to happen. So there can be some growth edges there about even receiving, you know, because this is the thing, like women, we tend to only be comfortable with receiving if we can give straight back.
Yeah.
You know?
Wow. That's true.
Yeah. And if we can't, it's so uncomfortable that it's so hard to receive, you know. So it's not true receiving, is it? You know, it's just, so yeah, there's often a growth edge there. So I guess those things aside, I just think it's a really good activity to practice this idea of leaning back, you know, and it can be done in client sessions, in any conversations with people as well, just to sort of notice where your posture is, and just because it's probably a little bit forward, to sort of just ever so slightly lean back, and it kind of shifts that energy, you know. So that's really good. And then just to, in general, lean back and really just observe what's going on, you know. And this is where maybe I'd recommend find out what your human design is. Because most people are working against their design. You know, you've got so Morgan, are you what human design type are you?
I'm a generator, 6-2 generator, emotional authority.
Oh, okay. And Lucy, what are you?
I'm a manifesting generator, 5-2 with emotional authority.
So most anyone who's got generator in them, they're generally we're all trying to initiate. You know, I'm going to do it.
Yes.
And then the manifestors, who are meant to be initiating, are sitting back waiting for permission. Right. And so it's all a bit kind of, you know, skew. So it's really good to know what your design is, because if you can start experimenting with that, I mean, that really made such a big difference to my business. So, and, you know, I mean, I could just say also generally do less, rest more. I mean, that, you know, I know that seems like too simple for people. But yeah, in fact, just on that doing less, I'll share a few things that I did with the whole Facebook group thing. My first step before, like, this happened a year or 18 months before actually going out of them entirely, I was like, right, instead of trying to do these like 4 or 5 groups, because that's how the systems tends to be taught, you know, it's like $0, you know, marketing, whatever, but it's not zero. It's not zero cost, because there's a cost to your health.
Yes.
So I just focused on one. I went, you know what, I'm just going to do one group really well. And that really worked. That was super helpful. I got like a pretty good profile in that group. So that really works, just zeroing in, doing one thing well. And then I've found that approach works well for a lot of things. So also, I'm just going to do one platform really well instead of trying to do them all well, you know. Yeah. And even in terms of offerings, like do something really well, or at least be known for that thing, you know. I think that's also a good thing, you know. And then my idea, because I mean, I hear this idea of like being multi-passionate, and they really don't like being told don't do one thing or whatever. I feel that I'm multi-passionate, but what makes sense to me is, although I want to do all these things, what I often get caught up in having, like, working on all of these things at once, and none of them are moving forward.
Yeah.
So when I have gone, right, I'm just going to focus on that and get that running, then I can move on to the next thing. I mean, that just really works for me, you know.
Yeah, I hear you. And working and focusing on that one thing in response, rather than creating purely on your inspiration. That I found is not correct for me. And that's through experience, is having, you know, spent many hours of my time and you know, of my energy creating something that I received through inspiration, but I didn't share with anyone. And so I created it and then offered it to the world, and it was like tumbleweed.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
And you may have seen, I think you may have commented on it, Lucy, that I wrote that The Tale of Two Generators.
Yes.
Did you
Brilliant.
see that? Yeah, it describes that, because that was being me as well, you know. Even after learning about my design and having a lot of successes, like there was, I think it was last year, there was just something that was really important to me, you know. And it was about digital, having a digital Sabbath and this sort of thing. And I wrote a few things about it. People really resonated, but no one really asked for my help with it. Yeah. But I created a program, you know, and guess what happened? Nothing.
Yeah.
A single registration. And like prior to that, most of my things had been like booked out like a week or two early, and this one was like nothing. So it's like, oh, I just got to market it harder, you know. No.
Yeah. And so how do you deal with like disappointments like that, if you would call that a disappointment, or things how it just kind of didn't work out as expected? And
okay, first I cry.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. And then I might cry. Maybe I need to cry a bit, but no, that's probably, actually, there is, with things like that, a grieving process, you know, because it's like, yeah, I wanted this to happen, it's not going to happen. And actually, yeah, in all seriousness, if I get tears out and that energy, emotion, it's almost like I go, right, moving on, you know, we're on to the next thing. Yeah. So that can really help. And talking it through, well, even if I talk it through with someone, that ultimately leads to like tears, so it's the same result. Sort of like that energy, emotion. Yeah. But it's hard, you know. It can be hard to deal with disappointment, and to not take things personally as well, you know. And this is actually something that I'm dedicating the next 12 months to, the 4 agreements, which you may have heard of. Yeah. I mean, I'd heard of the 4 agreements, but I couldn't have told you what they were, you know, prior to like a month or so ago, when I just saw a summary of them come up on a newsfeed. And I was just going through some stuff here in Italy, and I was just like, my whole suffering is because I took it personally and I'm making assumptions. And I started to see that playing out in so many areas of my life. And I'm like, if I could really master this, this would change my life and my business. So the work has started, but yeah, that's that book, like that would be one of my recommendations. Get that book, get it into you, you know.
Yeah. Oh, thank you so much for bringing that up and for recommending it. I really feel like that's incredibly powerful work as well. And I know that you know, the one that you mentioned about taking things personally, I love that you've shared that with us, and with such beautiful honesty about the fact that it hurts. And it
Yeah.
does. And that's the
Yeah.
reality of it. We're not looking for strategies to not feel what we feel. That's one of the key aspects that we've noticed through this project about burnout is women in particular not allowing themselves to feel,
Yeah.
bottling up the emotions. So thank you so much for sharing that. It's
Yeah, you're welcome.
so good to be able to share on that level.
Mm.
So speaking about quiet confidence, that's something that is just so beautiful and it's elegant. So talk to us a little bit about what that means, what that looks like, how to bring that in as a practice.
Yeah. So, yeah, this idea of quiet marketing, I mean, people have just loved that because it's like this oxymoron or whatever you want to call it. It's like, how do those two things go together? So for me, it's like when I think about what, well, I guess in particular, quiet marketing is not. It's not about being loud and making big flashy promises and saying this is going to absolutely change your life and like just talking things up and that kind of thing, and always being in people's face all the time. I think having quiet confidence is, well, you may be the quietest person in the room, but you speak in volumes as well. And I think we can all remember a time where we've been at a party or something and there's someone quiet there, but they're strong. And you just want to, like, when they speak, it's like, it's interesting. And, so, so for me, it's come to represent as well everything that is opposite to what I was ever taught to how to be successful in business. And you could probably say be successful in life, like even if you have a career rather than a business, so to speak. And it kind of drills down to some very specific things in a business sense. So I was just going to quickly touch on a few things. So you touched on, in the introduction, I heard that text that you read out already touched on some of it, that the standard way that we've been taught to grow a business is to have a freebie, which I don't have, or, well, not a opt-in one. So obviously my freebie, which is a no opt-in freebie. I just don't do anything that doesn't light me up. So I never liked this idea of 5-day challenges or 7-day, whatever days they are. Do you know what I mean? Although I'd been involved in a few as a participant, the reason I ended up not liking them is because of how I felt as a participant, because I was always behind. And there was always stuff in my inbox. So it was basically an overwhelm generator thing. Like it just generated overwhelm. And like no one finishes these things. Like it's such a small, and it's really, it's just to sell a product, isn't it, really? And the free webinars, again, we get taught that we got to, you got to do free webinars, or you can't have a business without free webinars. Well, I've never done a free webinar in my whole business life. So but I've done I've done different things, So like my way to go about things is to do a paid community class. And it's where, there's an even energetic exchange. I'm providing, they're also providing, they're in terms of paying. And I have found that's a really lovely way to just hang out with some people, have some really good conversations and make it a conversation-based thing. And then I found that people will act on or find out about my offers without calls to action, basically. In fact, I've often found, I get more call to action without a call to action,
Awesome.
When I promote a thing, it's like, I don't know, it's like I don't get that much. But, when I don't promote a thing, it's like somehow people find me and they go to my website and, you have to apply to be on my list as well, right? You've got to answer some questions. So these things are all I don't know, they feel more intimate, they feel more, and yeah, it's like it's a quiet but effective way to build, a genuine following.
Yeah, that's
Yeah,
really
I love
powerful.
that. I love that approach.
Yeah.
I'd love to try that with my business as well.
Yeah.
So for our audience and our listeners, you do have a no opt-in freebie, and would you like to tell them a little more about that?
Yeah, sure. So, what I'm giving the guys for this summit is my audiobook, which is it's called the Foundations of Quiet Marketing.
Nice.
It's normally $7 from my website, but I'm giving you guys like a secret link, and you'll be able to. Yeah, I think I set it up so you'll be able to play it through the SoundCloud app. And yeah, it's a really nice audio. I listened to it. I recorded it probably a year ago, and I listened to the whole thing again recently, and I was just like, that's really good.
Dang, that's good.
I listen to my stuff or watch my stuff, and I think, oh God, get that off the internet. But I'm like, no, that was, it was just this really. I think there's probably there'll be unexpected things in there for people. It's just not hardcore marketing. It's really about, I guess, looking after yourself as well. There's elements of that in there, so I think people really enjoy that. Yeah.
Well, thank you so much. That's incredibly generous, and we will put that in the show notes so that everyone can have that gift. Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome.
So, Dani, we have a question that we like to ask all of our speakers to bring the session to a close. And that question is, if you could send a supportive and loving message to a younger version of you from, say, 20 odd years ago, what would you say to her?
Yeah. I think I would say something along the lines of slow and steady really does win the race, and that speeding ahead and trying to get fast results really only kind of sets you back. I think that would be the main message. Yeah.
Beautiful. I love that.
Yeah. I still got to remind myself today.
Yeah. Oh, beautiful. Thank you so much, Dani, for being a part
welcome.
of this interview series, and for everything you shared, all your insights and your thoughts and feelings on burnout and slow living and all the gems you shared with us today. We really appreciate it. Thank you so much.
Yeah, you're welcome, ladies. It's been a real pleasure to hang out with you and have this conversation.
Thank you, Dani.
Right, thanks, guys.